I like it.
Hey everyone, we're live. Welcome to Dataverse, a monthly data series where we look at new information and bring together experts to talk about it, give advice, and give their take. Today we have Andy from Orbit Media and Michele from Mantis Research. You want to give us an intro?
Sure. So I'm thrilled to collaborate with you guys on this. I'm really excited about this conversation and about the data we've got to present. But I'm the co-founder of a web development company here in Chicago. That's been 20 years. So about 20 years in search and analytics and about 12 or 13 years in content strategy, blogging, social media, working with influencers, doing email marketing. So, yep, love content, love teaching, and glad to be here.
And he's also very good at content. I've been lucky enough to work with him before. And Michele.
Yeah, so I work with an organization called Mantis Research. So we help marketers publish and amplify their own original research. Like Andy, I've been in the content space for a really long time. I used to work for CMI for about 7-8 years. So once I left CMI, we started Mantis because we just love research. I think it's a great opportunity.
For those of you that don't know, CMI is Content Marketing Institute, which is kind of the best of the best as far as content is concerned. And Mantis is the best of the best when research is concerned, except for SurveyMonkey. Just kidding. Let's see. So if you're joining us live and you want to leave some comments along the way, if you have thoughts about what we're talking about, if you just want to chime in and say where you're from and the fact that you're listening, and if you have questions, we will probably have time to address those at the end. So feel free to drop them in the comments. Okay, so moving on, we're going to dive right into the data. This is all the data that we're going to be talking about today is from a survey that the three of us collaborated on, SurveyMonkey, Andy, and Michele. It's a survey of marketers, almost 500 all across the country, and we used SurveyMonkey Audience to do it, along with some organic outreach from both of their social media partners with followers, which is a significant population of people. Okay, so the first question that we're going to talk about is, what is thought leadership? Who can be a thought leader? What is, what counts as it? It's kind of a buzzword. So do you have to be famous to be a thought leader? Can brands be a thought leader? We have a whole bunch of data points related to this, and I'll just read through some of the first ones. You might have an image up on your screen now, and that is a data point that we have around, can thought leadership be outsourced? Is it up? Okay, great. Andy, do you want to speak to that point? And then we can dive into more of the, who are the types of individuals that qualify as thought leaders?
Yeah, I think we're probably already triggering some of our viewers, me included. That just sounds ridiculous. Thought leadership can be outsourced. It's like, oh, I'm too busy to think. I'll have that person do my thoughts for me. Like, obviously, on its face, it's like a crazy idea. In reality, it's done every day. Thought leadership is frequently outsourced. A lot of companies, a lot of brands will hire agencies or specialists, consultants that literally their value proposition is, we're going to help you produce thought leadership. It comes down to the question of really, what is thought leadership? Does it have to be strongly held views and deep beliefs? Colette, as you once said, I like that term, deep beliefs. So thought aspects of work can be outsourced, obviously. Tasks can be outsourced. You can't really outsource your point of view. So it gets into the nuance there, but the reality is that, yes, what people call thought leadership is outsourced all over the web, and many of the things that you read were not actually, bylined articles weren't actually created from that executive in some cases.
Yeah, it's so true. I was a thought leadership writer for about 5 years. And I think it's kind of a mix. Sometimes it's truly outsourced. People are just kind of kicking it out and asking somebody else to come up with their ideas. And sometimes it's more of like the reality is just it's a collaborative effort. You need different skill sets. Some people are really good at doing the research to find the data points to back it up. Some people are good at big ideas. And so sometimes really good pieces of thought leadership come from multiple people. But that's not really exactly the same as just asking someone else to do it end to end. So maybe there's different types of outsourcing too.
You can't abdicate your views, right? But you can delegate certain tasks.
Yeah, exactly.
I know one of the things I think was super interesting about this too is what I would love to do if we do this survey again next year is really delve into how people are outsourcing their content. Is it the point of view, like you said? Is it the editing in the back end? I know we haven't gotten to this yet, but one of the things we find that people value strongly in a thought leader is having someone who is easy to understand. So if you can use that ghostwriter on the back end to really clarify your thoughts and make them come to life, that could be a really, really great way to have your point of view, but then bring someone else into the process.
Totally. And now I'm just going to read you guys a stat of the breakdown of what these marketers that we surveyed consider to be a thought leader. So 68% of people think it's an expert in their field, and that was far and away the most popular answer. And I should note that I think we enabled people to select everyone that they believed constituted a thought leader. So these obviously won't add up to 100. 34% said CEOs, 32% said analysts, 32% said authors, 28% said public speakers, and 20% said consultants. So there's obviously a pretty big gap between that 68% of an expert in their field and the next highest, which is CEOs, followed by analysts and authors. Michele, do you want to talk about why you think experts in their fields stand out so much?
Yeah, I mean, I was really glad to see that experts topped that list because, and again, we'll be talking about this in a little bit, but when you look at all of those different qualities that are important in thought leadership, some of them are saying something that's new and challenging people to think in a new way. I think it's really important that someone is an expert. They have to understand that field. They have to understand the body of work that is out there. I mean, that's just being an expert is just the starting gate to being a thought leader, in my opinion. But once you have that knowledge and once you're sharing that, if you can start to shift what you believe and shift how others think, it makes a lot of sense that experts are a really, good person to be thought leaders.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's like if you're asking everyone to rally around your idea, it's best if you're qualified to speak about it. So that was interesting to me. I think what was more interesting to me was how unified everyone was in that belief. And no one was like going towards the CEOs too much. And then I think, Michele, you had also had some interesting things in your notes about brands versus individuals. So 70% of the people in our survey said that they believe that a brand can be a thought leader. And only 30%, disagreed. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah. I see Andy shaking his head, and
Andy's
I'm
no.
You know what?
No.
I'm with
You don't
Andy.
think SurveyMonkey's a thought leader? Come on.
I think you are. I think people can be. Michele, what do you think?
No, I was going to say, I think people can too. Like, so for instance, I used to work for Content Marketing Institute, or CMI, and our founder is Joe Polizzi. You talk about CMI, I mean, people think Joe. People rallied around Joe. They loved his ideas. They loved what he was thinking. So even though Joe was only one part of CMI, a huge part of CMI, I mean, like, people gravitate towards people. They gravitate towards people's ideas. I don't think it ever could have been what it was without that face in front of it. Even as the company grew, there were multiple thought leaders, but I still think people gravitate towards people. It's hard to have that connection with a brand that you do with a person.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I'm with the 30% of the respondents who said no, a brand cannot be a thought leader, just because brands don't have thoughts. Companies don't have thoughts. Companies have people, and people have thoughts. So you could say that brands can take action. There's leadership within positions of businesses. And I agree with that, of course. Like, there's lots of great examples of companies that take a stand through their positions. But there has to be someone that actually put them in that direction, right? There's usually like a leadership team that points in that way. But and we're getting to it, but if the definition of thought leadership is just content marketing, if your bar is that low, can brands publish content marketing? Yes. Can content marketing be outsourced? Yes. Do you have to be an expert to publish good content? Yes. So, we're getting closer now to this idea of, like, really, is there any difference between just thought leadership and content? A lot of these responses make me think, like, in the mind of the survey respondents, they're really just thinking of this as content marketing.
Yeah.
But
I think I hear you on that. I actually think that brands can be thought leaders. And here's why. I think a part of thought leadership like as we're speaking about it, involves like what you're saying, Joe, having that face, being that face out there speaking for that. And a lot of brands do have that. A good example is Salesforce. They have Tony, who's like their face of equality, but also they do so much thought leadership that isn't him, that isn't Tony Profit, that it's nameless people in their marketing and PR teams, or coming up with they have like an equality conference around sales, Dreamforce every year. So sometimes it's like, obviously it's the work of individuals that go into creating this body of wealth of ideas, but those individuals don't always get their face out there. Sometimes it's like a video that a company makes and it like makes you think about things differently, and there is no credit to the people that made that video. There's no human aspect to that. So it is thought leadership. It's only known as coming from a brand. Of course it's rooted in people and their ideas. I don't know. A brand is just a bunch of people.
And those people have thoughts and put together that they can take a position and take a stand. So I get it. I'm resisting that one. I'm like, no, companies, they're profit machine. Like a business has like one goal, right? Don't kid yourself. But yeah, I mean, there's lots of examples of tons, like the famous ones, of course, we could list. But I'd absolutely see the point.
Yeah. SurveyMonkey is a profit machine, but we also empower the curious.
Which is why you're successful. Yeah, that's a great.
Keep marketing throughout this. And if you're just joining us now, by the way, we're going to do some questions at the end, so feel free to leave comments underneath, and we'll address them. Okay, so that's a great transition to our next area of discussion, which is, what is the consensus? What matters for actually effective, good thought leadership? Andy already dived into this a little bit with like his opinion that content marketing and thought leadership are not the same. We've got our next graph up, which is what everyone said was most important. I'm sorry, my coworker is going to give me okay, great. So we've got quotes in the media, inspirational content, opinion, interviews, research reports, trends, and educational content. So those are the types of content that most people think count as thought leadership. Andy and Michele, do you want to talk about your take on that and what data points were most striking to you?
Go ahead, Michele.
I mean, it's really interesting to me that educational content tops the list. And as we were putting this research together, that was one of our questions that we were really curious about. Like, can purely educational content be considered thought leadership? Because like Andy said, educational content is very similar to content marketing. And shouldn't thought leadership be something more, something different? I personally—
71%. That answer was 71% of people said purely educational content can be thought leadership, right?
And I'll be honest, over the course of this study, I feel like my viewpoint has changed a bit. I do think, and as we talk about the different qualities of thought leadership, part of me does think, educational content that does say something new, that does challenge someone, that does lead someone to take an action, can be thought leadership. But by and large, I don't think that the vast majority of educational content out there is thought leadership. But I feel like that's just what marketers are most comfortable with. So that's kind of their like starting line.
Yeah. I want the word to mean something more. I want thought leadership to go beyond educational content, because there's lots of educational content that is just like how-to instructional videos that don't lead you anywhere. Now you know how to install the car seat, the baby seat in the back of your car, like that. That meets the definition of content marketing, but does not meet the definition of thought leadership, or I don't think it should. So for me, and what my view always was, and a decent percentage of survey respondents basically agreed, thought leadership should be should have values behind it, strong opinion. You should not shy from controversy. You should be taking a stand. If you're not taking a stand, what was this? I had a quote from Seth Godin. I got to ask Seth Godin this, and I'll read it. This is Seth Godin's view on thought leadership, which is thought leadership always creates tension. In other words, that's a litmus test, right? If it didn't create tension, if you don't read that and think, ooh, not everyone's behind that, thought leadership always creates tension. It's about making assertions. You have to be willing to be wrong. You can be certain that some people will disagree. So that, I think, is a higher standard, and that feels and sounds to me like leadership.
Mhm.
And I don't think that you have to do that to be an amazing marketer. I think that there's lots of my favorite marketers don't necessarily take a stand on issues, but that's my favorite definition of it, is the one that gives you a feeling because it is putting itself out there and it's for something and therefore kind of against something.
That makes sense. I'm going to read you guys a few more statistics. About 70% of marketers think that it is extremely / very important that thought leadership gets people to take action. 60% of marketers think it's extremely or very important that it results in a positive marketing outcome. And the qualities that thought leaders should possess, the most important was that they're easy to understand. Michele referred to this earlier. The second is that they challenge the way I think. Then that they publish data they publish data to validate their position. So they use real facts and statistics to back themselves up. Then that they say something new, and then have strong opinions cited by others, and then are likable was near the bottom, and publishing consistency. The lowest and most unimportant thing is that they say something that is unpopular or controversial. So people do not want contrarian answers.
Yep.
So
I hear it.
Which of those elements stood out to you guys the most? As like, that is
marketing. I mean, the marketers are the panel. So the marketers are saying thought leadership is marketing, that it should drive a marketing outcome or it should trigger some action. So that's one of the immediate takeaways, is that for the most part, people, when they talk about thought leadership, they're talking about a marketing strategy or tactic. But Michele, you had a great insights into the priority or that order of answers.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I thought was really interesting is that marketers said that marketers were more likely to say that it's okay to have a strong opinion, but they shied away from saying something that's unpopular or controversial. And to me, quite frankly, those are like two sides of the same coin. You know, it's so, and I feel like marketers are just, even to say something that has an opinion means that someone might not like the other side of it. So
you can have opinions, but only if they're popular.
Exactly. And to what you said though, Andy, is exactly what I feel like marketers want. They don't want people to not like what they're saying, or they're scared, or they have leadership in place where, quite frankly, we've all been through that, where we have to put things through this whole, process. And by the time it gets out, it's very watered down. So I don't know if marketers are nervous to say things that are unpopular, or if we just don't have the processes in place to make that actually happen. But it's interesting that there was such a different viewpoint, even though they quite frankly said a really similar thing.
Yeah, I think as someone who has a background in PR, you should definitely not say things that are unpopular. No, but I think that there is a difference between saying something that's new and weird, like, we're going to all have self-driving cars in 10 years, or, the future is going to be like this, or it's really important that we invest in, benefits and perks for our employees. Like, that's all kind of like thought leadership, but none of it's really unpopular. I think I view unpopular as being deliberately contrarian. And one thing that I kind of noticed throughout these findings is I felt like all of the people that were taking this had this like concept of thought leadership as just kind of fluff that didn't mean anything. And so they were doing everything they could to say like, no, like I make my thought leadership matter. Like I use data, I make it educational. Like it's not just fluff, it's valuable. So maybe that's where that shying away from just being unpopular or controversial for the sake of being controversial was.
Yeah. And I think there's like degrees to this. Like you can say things, you can take a stand that makes you like a complete outsider in your culture in a way, but thought leadership doesn't necessarily have to do that. You can have strong opinions that aren't necessarily controversial. So for example, some of the biggest debates I've gotten into at conferences were literally about the Oxford comma.
Yeah.
Everybody's got a view on the Oxford comma. I personally don't use the Oxford comma, and I get skewered and I know. See, look.
I don't get it. Yeah.
Yeah. There you go. So there's degrees to this. Like, you can be, if you want to use this as a tactic, okay, just to be practical about it, you want to use this as a tactic. Like this is something we're going to dive into. We're going to try to take a stand a bit more. It doesn't have to be about gun control. Yeah. There's little mundane things, right? That's why Seinfeld was popular. there's little mundane things that people actually have feelings about. And you can start, if your goal is to engage, increase engagement on your content or get traction in social, you can choose things that are not controversial, but still, have maybe not the Oxford comma, but I tell you, if you post anything about that, people are going to jump in. Or that post the other day from LinkedIn, I'm like, if you go to a conference, you should sit in the front row. 35,000 views, 130
Whoa.
comments. Yeah, 350 people reacted to it just because I said in a LinkedIn post, you should sit in the front row at a conference. I wouldn't do that. I don't know if it's going to be good. I might want to get out. Like, that's a pretty mundane topic, like where to sit. But I put out that.
It's different. It's unique.
Yeah, people really found that like it touched a tiny nerve. So it doesn't have to be, I like the idea in a way. I kind of get it. Like, have a strong opinion, but you don't have to be controversial, because I think there's degrees, and this doesn't all have to be like big picture, global warming, sociology, racial injustice or something. There's lots of things that niche audiences have passion about. And so you can, if you're not used to taking a big stand in your content, you can maybe take small steps toward that.
That's a great transition into what we're going to talk about very, very quickly, because we're running short on time. So if each of you guys could give just one tip of where you see the greatest opportunity. There is also some data on the screen right now about what people are already pursuing with their thought leadership. So the most common one is social media posts. Speaking engagements is the next most popular, then blog posts. Original research, 52% of people are doing that. Op-eds and contributed content, webinars, podcasts are the lowest there. And then lower even than that was backlinks, which is one place where we talked about having a lot of opportunity. So given that that's what most people are doing currently, where do you guys think there's the most opportunity to make better thought leadership that stands out? Start with Michele.
Yeah, so this isn't a different stat that we had, but one of the things we looked at was what marketers are doing currently with their thought leadership and what they want to do. And one of the things that most marketers are doing is that they're using data to validate what they believe. And I think that works really, really well. And obviously I do research, so I have a bias there. But I think if you tie that with what people think makes a good thought leader, saying something new, challenging the way someone thinks, helping someone take an action, being easy to understand. I think if you can make your data and view it under that lens, I think that's a huge opportunity for marketers to make a really big impact as a thought leader.
I totally agree. Sometimes people contact me and say, hey, can you help me get into public speaking more? Or can you help me get some press on this topic? And one of the first things I notice while talking to them is that basically they're saying they want to be more prominent. They're doing personal branding, in a lot of cases closely related to thought leadership. But I think if you want to go down this path, you need to make sure that your LinkedIn profile needs to be polished to perfection. Because if someone goes and searches, let's say I even refer you or someone refers you to someone for an event or something like that, if they're going to go search for you, and you have to pay attention to personal SEO, which is what the search results page looks like for your name, or your name plus your city, or your name plus your company, so that you're managing your personal reputation. And your LinkedIn profile should not have Microsoft Office as your top skill. It's terrible what people do. So if you want to, or there's an executive in your company that wants to be more, put themselves out there more with content. You really, ground zero for that, guys, is your online profiles. For a lot of people, their LinkedIn profile ranks higher than their own website for their name. So I think that's just like table stakes. Of course, be an expert. Of course, use back up your insights and connect with people. But you've got to really make sure that your personal brand sparkles online.
Makes sense.
Not very controversial.
Okay, so what we're going to do, I'm just going to read a few comments that people left. And then we're going to wrap up. I wanted to say thank you so much to Andy and Michele, who are wonderful. They're both going to drop write-ups that they had in the comments to this video. So if you want to read something that's longer from either of them and get their perspectives, then but it'll be in the comments. We're also going to drop a write-up from SurveyMonkey that talks about how to use original research to make thought leadership with more substance. And so that will also be in the bottom. And then also, if you'd like to cover this research, if you're writing about it, if you work in PR or content marketing, let us know, because we can share some more data points that are unpublished with you. We can share the raw data, we can provide graphics, can answer questions. So reach out to any of the three of us, myself, Andy, or Michelle, if you have questions, and we're happy to help you. And our names should all be in the write-up for this video. So now we're just going to finish on reading some of the comments. We had, I'm going to slaughter this name, I'm going to call you Dr. A. You agree. So I'm sorry. I just think it'll be more offensive if I try to read this. You said you agree with Andy. Humans are just representatives of companies, and companies don't have any thoughts that are organic to them. That's true. I guess if employees are turning over, companies can always change how they think. Also, how can inspirational content only be the second most popular one? It's clearly the most impressive. If you want to make an impact on values, you have to do that. Ian O'Callahan said, thought leadership should be a platform for change, but the problem is some people don't like change. So that's an interesting take on the, 60% of people think that it has to drive change. Okay, any last thoughts from you, Andy and Michelle, before we sign off?
Yeah, quick plug, since you're not plugging it very well, but this was so possible, so easy, so much easier than it would have been because of SurveyMonkey Audience, which builds panels for you, any group. You're going to get a ton of interesting data, so much to talk about. It's going to support thought leadership because that research was a big, correlated with the result. SurveyMonkey Audience, just take a look at that. It's an amazing product that I will be using again and again. Thank you.
And my last thought is just, and I know Andy talks about this all the time, but if you guys are trying to do something new and say, dig into an issue, partner with people like, Andy and Colette. This was such a fun project. And I think it's something that any one of us could have done on our own. And I think it's just a great way to collaborate. So thanks to both of you.
Great. This is lovely, as always, working with you guys. If you're tuning in and you want to get more of the fleshed out data, look in the comments, read the write-ups. You'll have a ton more to think and talk about. This has been Dataverse, a monthly series where we talk about data and trends with experts and get their take and their advice. Thank you.